Hi everyone, this video will be about pragmatics, and today we are going to show some background concepts: the message model of linguistic communication, the inferential model of linguistic communication, discourse and conversation, and special topics. So, to start with, what is pragmatics? Pragmatics is the study of language use, that means the context, and all those investigations which consider the action, state, and environment of a conversation. But we had a problem. The most pervasive characteristic of humans is that we talk, use language to do something. We focus on what a person is doing with words in particular situations. Also, we focus on the intentions, purpose, beliefs, and desires that the speaker has in speaking. And communication is a social affair. The message model of linguistic communication. In the message model, the speaker acts as a transmitter and the hearer acts as a receiver, and the channel that both use is the vocal auditory path. And according to the message model, communication is successful when the hearer decodes the same message that the speaker encodes. Ambiguity. Several expressions are linguistically ambiguous, and the hearer must determine which of the possible meanings of an expression is the one that the speaker intends as operative on that special occasion. For instance, in the example, "It's raining cats and dogs," that doesn't mean that are raining cats and dogs, the animals. That means that it's raining very heavily. Under determination of reference. The message often contains information about particular things being referred to, and such reference is rarely unique, determined by the meaning of expressions. For example, if I said the shrewd politician could be a different politician for each one of us. For someone could imagine Obama as a very intelligent politician, and for another one, Trump is an excellent example of a clever politician. Under determination of communicative intention. The message model represents successful communication as simply producing, hearing, and understanding meaningful expressions. But this is not all there is to communication. What is missing in the model so far is an account of the speaker's communicative intention, which is not, in general, uniquely determined by the meaning of the expression uttered, but is part of the message communicated. For example, "I'll be there tonight" might be a prediction, a promise, or even a threat, depending upon the speaker's intention in the appropriate circumstances. Despite this various intention on the part of the speaker, the sentence has only one relevant meaning. Non-literality. The message model does not account for the additional fact that we often speak non-literally. Rather, the hearer is intended to use the literal meaning in figuring out what the speaker is actually intended to communicate. The common cases of this problem are irony, sarcasm, figurative use of language, such as metaphor. For instance, the example of the picture is a metaphor of global warming. Indirection. The message model does not account for the fact that we sometimes mean to communicate more than what our sentences mean. We sometimes speak indirectly. That is, we sometimes intend to perform one communicative act by means of performing another communicative act. For example, it will be quite natural to say "my car has a flat tire" to a gas station attendant, with the intention that he repair the tire. In this case, we are requesting the hearer to do something. But, for example, in another context, if a police officer asks why a car has illegally parked in the middle of the street, it's as simple a report of "I had a flat tire" will be a contextually appropriate response. Non-communicative acts. Communicating a message is not always the purpose of our remarks, and this model does not connect at all with these other uses. For example, there are institutional acts such as firing or baptizing someone whose function is to change the institutional status of that person. Communicative success is not the point of such utterance, since the employee is fired and the baby is baptized, whether or not they recognize it at the time. Thus, it's not necessary to recognize any communicative intention for these acts to succeed. Now, the 6 problem areas discussed above show why the simple message model of token exchange does not even begin to be adequate to account for the full richness of normal human language use. Clearly, more than just common language is required to enable the hearer to identify the speaker's communicative intentions on the basis of a speaker's utterance. Successful communication concepts according to the message model. To this model, communication is successful if the hearer receives the speaker's message, and that's all. And that means that don't take into consideration all the problems that I named before. For instance, in order to recover the determinate message, the message model of communication must assume that the language is unambiguous, what the speaker is referring to is determined by the meaning of the referring expressions uttered, that the communicative intention is determined by the meaning of the sentence, that speakers only speak literally, and a speaker only speaks directly, and also suggests that speakers use words, phrases, and sentences only to communicate.
The inferential model of linguistic communication. Here, the connection is inferential. Linguistic communication is successful when the hearer recognizes the speaker's communicative intention. Successful communication. Linguistic communication works because the speaker and the hearer share a system of inferential strategies leading from the utterance of an expression to the hearer's recognition of the speaker's communicative intent. Here, if the hearer recognizes the speaker's intention, the speaker must choose an expression that will facilitate such recognition. The inferential model of communication proposes that in the course of learning to speak our language, we also learn how to communicate in that language, and learning these acquired beliefs or presumptions, which are attitudes or acts, as well as a system of inferential strategies. Presumptions. Linguistic presumptions. Unless there is evidence to the contrary, the hearer is presumed capable of determining the meaning and the reference of the expression in the context of utterance. Communicative presumptions. Unless there is evidence to the contrary, a speaker is assumed to be speaking with some identifiable communicative intent. Presumption of literalness. Unless there is evidence to the contrary, the speaker is assumed to be speaking literally. Conversational presumptions. Relevance. The speaker's remarks are relevant to the conversation. Sincerity. The speaker is being sincere. Truthfulness. The speaker is attempting to say something true. Quantity. The speaker contributes the appropriate amount of information. Quality. The speaker has adequate evidence for what she says. Direct and literal communication. In direct and literal communication, we say what we mean and mean what we say. We have been advocating the idea that even the simplest form of linguistic communication are complicated affairs, and that once we drop the idealizations that the message like intended inference, shared contextual beliefs, and various presumptions to explicate the connection between sounds and communicative intent. Direct strategy. When we communicate directly, we perform just one communicative act. For example, go home. It is a part of propositional act, which Tamara will explain more about it. Literal strategy. When we communicate literally, what we say is compatible with what we mean. Contextual appropriateness. The hearer recognizes that it could be contextually appropriate for the speaker to be speaking literally. Literal. The hearer recognizes what the speaker is intending to communicate literally and directly. For example, give me a hand.
Non-literal communication. Non-literal communication occurs when our words have another interpretation than their literal meaning. Some of them are used because their literality is contextually inappropriate. Here we have some examples of speaking non-literally. The first one is overstatement, which is a deliberate exaggeration for emphasis, which is also known as hyperbole. For example, she cried so long that made a lake. Obviously, it's impossible that a person could make a lake with tears. The second example, I am so hungry, I could eat a horse. Also, we know that eat a horse is impossible, to eat an entire horse. Irony or sarcasm, that's the second example. We know that sarcasm or irony commonly are answers to obvious questions, or probably they are jokes, as we can see in the examples. We have also figures of speech. The first one is synecdoche, which is when we use the parts of the body. The second figure of speech is metonymy. A metonymy is when we use an object which substitutes something very closely associated with it. For example, the White House denounced the agreement. If I said the White House, I am referring to the president or staff. But it's impossible that the White House speaks. Another example could be the Crown issued a statement. It's impossible that the crowd speaks. Remember that all of the figures of speech are part of non-literally communication, and also they are exaggerations. Another figure of speech is metaphor. Metaphor is a direct comparison of two alike things. When we are given the characteristic of one object to another object. For example, if I said time is money, I am doing a comparison between time and money. Money is valuable, therefore time also is valuable. Now, I am going to show you a video about the literal figures.
Sample 1 from Rice Krispie commercial.
Guys! Ow! They're in here! Hey, Pop! Nice trick! It was child's play!
Breakfast isn't breakfast without
Snap, crackle, pop, Rice Krispies!
Figurative language is snap, crackle, pop. It's an onomatopoeia. Sample 2 from Cars.
The deal was you fix the road, not make it worse. I'll scrape it off. Start over again.
Okay, look, Grandpa, I'm not a bulldozer. I'm a race car.
Oh, is that right? Then why don't we just have a little race?
The figurative language is, listen, Grandpa, I'm not a bulldozer, I'm a race car. It's a personification. Sample 3 from Monsters, Inc.
Good morning, Roz, my succulent little garden snail. And who would we be scaring today?
Wazowski, you didn't file your paperwork last night.
Oh, that darn paperwork. Wouldn't it be easier if it all just blew away?
Don't let it happen again.
Yes, well, I'll try to be less careless.
I'm watching you, Wazowski. Always watching.
Figurative language is, I'm watching you, always watching you. It's a cliche. Sample 4 from Little Rascals.
Yours is mine, no, it's mine is ours. You know just what to say to take a girl's breath away. This will take her breath away.
Figurative language is, you know just what to say to take a girl's breath away. It is a sign of douche. Sample 5 from The Cat in the Hat.
Cupcakeinator, I'm so excited!
Cupcake a what?
Cupcakeinator! Oh, this amazing device can instantly make cupcakes out of anything that you have in the kitchen. Wait a minute, did you say...
The figurative language is make cupcakes out of anything. It's a hyperbole. Sample 6 from 101 Dalmatians.
You'll be wearing it to the Chesterton trials. That's in April. Fur would be inappropriate.
But it's my only true love, darling. I live for fur. I worship fur. After all, is there a woman in all this wretched world who doesn't? Give it to Anita.
The figurative language is, I worship fur. I live for fur. It's a hyperbole.
Indirect communication. In indirect communication, we mean something more than what we mean directly. Sometimes when we speak, we are not only performing some direct form of communication, but also speaking indirectly. For instance, in the first example, we have the door is over there. When we said the door is over there, we are referring to request someone to leave to the place. For example, if I am having an argument with someone, I can say, the door is over there, if you want you can go. Contextual inappropriateness. It occurs when the hearer recognizes that it would be contextually inappropriate for the speaker to be speaking merely directly, although he gets the message. For example, if a teacher wants to teach to his or her students about that Nazism was good, that's obviously inappropriate. But she or he can show a movie or an episode of a Nazi Donald Duck. And the students, in the same way, are going to receive the message, are going to get the message. Discourse versus conversation. First of all, we have to know that the study of discourse is the study of units of language. A language is consisting of more than a single sentence, but connected by some system of related topics. That's the first thing. Then, we have to know that a discourse, it is the study of connected sequences of sentences or sentence fragments produced by a single speaker. That's very important. The discourse is produced by a single speaker. And then we have conversation, which is also called talk exchange. It is the study of connected sequences of sentences as discourse, but produced by more than a single speaker. So if we have one speaker, it's a discourse, and we have more than one speaker, it's a conversation. So we have, for example, in discourse, a lecture, because it's written by only one speaker or only one writer. Then we have jokes, because of the same reason of letters. And here in the image we have a joke that says, what do you call a fish with an eyes? A fish. That's a very bold joke. And then another example of discourse is a speech. because nobody is going to answer the speech, but they are going to have conversations then after the speech. And then we have conversation or talk exchanges. For example, in a debate with Mr. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, a conversation between friends, a debate, and etc. Then we have language and context. This is the context environment of the sentences which can reflect, affect the conversation or their parts structure like the opening, the turn taken, the closings, and also if exist the conclusions in conversations. Reflect. Reflect is when we use the language for giving importance to something or to not take into account another thing. For example, if I said, who shot the bear? John. John shot it. We can know that John was who shot the bear. But if I say, the bear which lives in the wood near to the house of Mary, the sister of John, who is the killer, is dead, in the embedding of the sentences, we are not taking into account that John was the killer of the bear. And also, we can see also not only morphology, syntax in reflect, also intonation. If I said the bear was shot by John, it's not the same that I said the bear was shot by John, giving importance to John. Let's reflect how we use language by avoiding certain words or phrases or giving importance. Furthermore, we have affect. Affect is the environment, is how the language affects the environment, how we prepare the environment of the conversation for telling something. For example, a child tells to his mom, "Mom, I love you." Mom answers, "I love too." But then, when the child is a teenager, "Mom, you know that I love you so much." And the mom, "Yes, what do you want?" Because the environment is affected and the teenager wants to affect the environment. For example, if the teenager broke a window, he is going to be like, "Mom, I love you so much. Oh, you look pretty today. I broke the window." That's affect. When we use language for affect environment. Then we have the structure of language, of conversation. The first one is greeting, the opening. Greeting. They are expressions of pleasure at meeting someone, but this expression can vary enormously in complexity and formality. Consider, for instance, the following examples. We have casual greetings, for example, between friends. We have formal greetings between owners of enterprise, etc. And we have informal context of greeting, like "sup nigga." An example of a casual greeting would be, "Hello, good morning, how are you? How have you been?" In a formal would be, "Good day, Mr. Smith." And an informal would be, "How you doing? What's up? Hi." Then the second part of the structure is the turn taking. All the conversations should have these three parts. The first one, P1, the speaker selects the next speaker. That's obvious. If there are three people speaking, sorry. For example, John is going to say, "Oh, how are you today, Marcia?" And he is selecting the next speaker. P2 is the first to talk becomes speaker. If we think in the message model, if I am speaking, the other person is going to be the receiver. So the first to talk is the speaker. And in P3, we have the speaker continues her or his own remarks. Obviously, if the speaker wants to talk about the weather, the rest of the conversation is going to be about the weather, even though someone else can change the topic of the conversation. So the question is, are these principles really rules that speakers follow? But obviously the question is not. The P2 structure of turn taken always occurs because it's part of the message model. But P1 and P3 can occur or can't occur. Then in the structure we have pre-closings and closings. Yes, as conversation rarely begin with their central topic, so they rarely come to an abrupt end. Participants don't simply quit talking. They have a highly ritualized way of bringing normal conversation to an end. The word ritualized referred to a word or a sentence that the speaker always says. Then the closing is divided into two parts, the pre-closing and the closing. The pre-closing is, well, it's been nice to talk to you. See you. That's the closing. See you. Goodbye. Bye-bye. So before to say goodbye, we have to do a pre-closing. For example, if I am saying, oh, you are going to the party, bye-bye, I can't say that. I can't say, oh, how are you? How's your mom? Bye-bye, I have to go. No, that's impossible. We have, oh, sorry, I have to go. I have to have lunch. So bye-bye. So before have an abrupt ending, we have to do a pre-closing. The final question is, does conversations have a conclusion? It doesn't happen always, but when the speakers forgot something, they can go back to the topic of the conversation and talk about something else. That's a conclusion. Could be a conclusion. It's a kind of conclusion. For example, oh, I have to go. I have to have lunch. Bye-bye. Oh, sorry. Remember that we have the party on Saturday. That we have the party on Saturday is a type of conclusion.
Performatives. Sentences which are not only describing a given reality, but also changing the social reality they are describing. For example, when a judge said, I now declare guilty, is changing a reality from a person who is innocent to convict. Speech acts. Speech acts are acts performed in uttering expressions. Utterance acts refers to complete communicative units, which might consist of single words, phrases, clauses, and clause combination in spoken context. Perlocutionary is an act performed by uttering something, an act that produces an effect on the hearer. Illocutionary is an act performed in saying something. Prepositional acts, as my partner Rocio says before, is a prepositional act in speech act that a speaker performs when referring or predicating in an utterance. For example, do you go home? The next chart is a summary of what I just said. Utterance acts are shouting, whispering, murmuring. Illocutionary acts are promising, reporting, asking. Perlocutionary acts are intimidating, persuading, deceiving. And prepositional acts are referring and predicating. Now, what's the difference between meaning, saying, and implicating? When we mean something, it means that the speaker must intend to produce some effect in an audience, for instance, a belief or an action. When we say something, the notion of what is said involves three ideas: the operative meaning of the expression that is uttered, the time of utterance, and the references made in the utterance. When we implicate something, the contribution of both parts, speaking and hearer, are involved in a conversation. Now, when we talk about speaker reference and denotation, there is a difference between reference and denotation itself. Reference is when we have certain ways to referring to objects and people around us that recognize our reference, since we share language expressions. Denotation, on the other side, is the literal meaning of words that a certain group of people share. Last but not least, we will see pragmatics presupposition, related to presupposing something in a background of an utterance which is assumed or taken for granted. For example, if I say, the car of my dad is yellow, the car of my dad is not yellow. The pragmatic presupposition involved inside of a sentence is that I can presuppose that my dad has a car.
So, it was our presentation of pragmatics. We hope you like it. Thanks for watching. And we are sorry for the quality of our presentation in class. We are very sorry. We hope that it helps you a lot. That's all. Thank you.